As we all know, climate change is one of the biggest ecological crises that the planet is currently facing, and its effects on wildlife are numerous. But its effect on birds in particular are going to be the subject of this video. So as the climate warms, spring in the northern hemisphere often is coming earlier and earlier in the year. And as many people are aware, there are many birds that migrate north in the spring after spending winters down in the tropics. These birds migrate north because in spring and summer there is an abundance of food for them to feed their offspring. While at the same time there not being as many species and therefore not as much competition as in the tropical regions, thus encouraging them to migrate back year after year. But it should be noted that most bird migrations are timed specifically so that when they reach their breeding grounds is when there's also peak abundance of food. That way, there's plenty of food available for them to feed their offspring, since bird offspring are usually very demanding and they have to feed them very often. Arriving at this time can be very crucial to maintaining reproductive success, because if the birds are arriving too late or basically misaligned with this peak, then chances are they're not going to be raising as many or as healthy chicks as they could if they're arriving at the proper time. But with spring coming earlier in the year, this presents a problem for most birds. Because birds don't use temperature to migrate north, they use photoperiod. So how many days it's been or how long the days are is what birds use to tell them to, oh, okay, it's time to migrate north now. This doesn't change. Climate change does not affect how long the days are. It just affects the overall temperature of the climate. So because of that, many bird species are arriving later than peak production time now. And so this can and is beginning to have effects on their overall population statuses. But this, of course, is not the only thing that is happening. Many bird populations are also beginning to move uphill and poleward in response to climate change. Though it should also be noted that the abundance of bird feeders is also contributing to at least some species moving northward as well. Now this is all nice and good for the mid-latitude and low elevation species, but this is bad news for the high elevation and high latitude ones. Because these animals are adapted to surviving in very cold conditions, they kind of don't have anywhere to go. You can only go so far up a mountain or so far northward. So eventually they'll just run out of room and start experiencing population decline and maybe extinction as a result. But mid-latitude species aren't guaranteed a super amazing future either, because there are some disadvantages with having to move northward. First off, it could be possible that the climate begins warming faster than the vegetation can keep up with it. Vegetation is nowhere near as mobile as birds and many animal species, and as a result, it cannot migrate or spread north as fast. And so if the temperature misaligns with the plants, then birds are not going to be able to have their habitats that they need in order to survive. But this also runs the risk of bird species which don't normally interact with each other beginning to interact. Though they're not introduced by humans, this can be very similar to effects that are happening with invasive species, where a newcomer, because of climate change, might end up outcompeting another one, or hybridizing with them, or having some other unknown effects. Furthermore, it is also very likely that extreme weather events will also contribute significantly to bird mortalities. Not just storms, but also heat waves. During heat waves, birds don't have air conditioning to go seek, and so many of them could end up dying in the heat or end up having reduced fitness because of them having to put into a lot of effort into their thermoregulation to making sure that they don't overheat. Seabird species are also being negatively affected. In the ocean, cold waters are very nutrient rich, and seabirds rely on these cold waters in order to feed their young and themselves. But as waters warm, they become less nutrient rich and less full of food. And as a result, many seabird populations might run the risk of starving. This, combined with other anthropogenic degradation, can make it seem like there's not a lot of hope for birds. But we have not reached a tipping point with them yet. Bird populations are still potentially recoverable, and there are many things that we can do to help them. First off, maintaining key habitat is a big one. Maintaining critical habitat for birds and other species is crucial for their survival. After all, how are they expected to live if they have nowhere to live? Obviously, habitat degradation is outside of a lot of individuals' immediate control, but you know what isn't? Window strikes. Window strikes is one of the leading causes of bird death in the United States. With 1 billion birds dying via window strikes every year in the US. Many of these strikes can be avoided though, by just simply putting things on your windows. Birds hit windows because they don't realize a window's there. So by putting stickers, it can help make a bird realize that there's an object there. Or alternatively, you can put straight lines across windows. Well, lines that are small enough that a bird, in theory, couldn't fly through it if it was a solid object and there was space between them. This way, you can still see outside, though maybe through some bars, but it prevents a bird from accidentally flying into your window and dying as a result of it. But window strikes is small pickings compared to the #1 leading cause of bird death in the United States: cats. Outdoor cats kill approximately 2.4 billion birds each year in the United States. That is over double the already astronomical number that are killed in window strikes. Cats are a huge threat to wildlife populations, and so by keeping your cat indoors, you can help mitigate those effects. Many studies have shown that cats can live perfectly happy and healthy lives living indoors. You just have to, give them toys and interact with them. Speaking more personally here, I have a cousin who has 3 indoor cats, and they're all doing fine, right? Like, they have toys, you interact with them, you play around with them every now and then, right? Like, they're living perfectly happy, healthy lives. Cats don't need to go outside to do that. In fact, because they can get into fights with other cats, other animals are more prone to diseases, it could potentially be argued that an outdoor lifestyle is actually less healthy for your furry friend than an indoor lifestyle. Reducing these problems of bird mortality will be very important to helping them survive changes in climate change. Maintaining large, healthy bird populations is crucial to how the population is able to respond to environmental changes. Not only can a larger population rebound faster than a smaller population, but with more individuals, there is a higher likelihood that mutations will arise that will help allow them to adapt to the changing environment. So doing whatever measures we can to help boost bird populations is very important to their overall survival, and we can still do it. Even though the overall number of birds in the US is 50% lower than it was only 50 years ago, they are not low enough that they are unrecoverable. We have seen in water birds, which have massive amounts of habitat protection and prevention from degradation, are already starting to have some rebounding effects. If a similar thing can be done for forest birds, backyard birds, etc., then many of their populations should be able to recover effectively and therefore respond to climate change more easily. But that being said, if nothing changes, then it's likely the issues will only get worse.